Hi, this is the Creation Tutor Ministries, the role of people in the endeavors of science, how we bolster our apologetics. Is science purely a neutral process? Science apart from people actually doing science? Does evidence really just stand for itself? Here's the evidence, take it how it lies? Does the scientist contribute anything to his or her work? And does anything from that scientist detract from that work? So we have additional and subtraction. Obviously, yes, there is. But where is the actual notice and recognition of this? The fallacy of the scientific method itself, the hypothesis, is generally listed as the top part of the scientific method. If ice is added to a glass of water, then the temperature will decrease. If P, then Q. I observe, I make my conclusion. I added ice to the glass of water and the temperature decreased. I proved my hypothesis. This is also called the fallacy of affirming the consequent. Logical fallacy, that means this is arbitrary, it means nothing. If I find out that my hypothesis is not correct, it's the fallacy of denying the antecedent. Now this is a problem because obviously the scientific method works so well. Why is that, however? That's a good question. Are you putting your own reality in your work? As I graded my students' paper, when they would come up with a hypothesis, I noticed that they're actually looking for that hypothesis in their observations. So are those observations really completely objective then? No, they weren't. The observations were actually tailored in such a way where they actually matched the hypothesis. In fact, creating your own reality. Now, two people could do the same experiment and get totally different interpretations. We have the same evidence, like this picture right here. This is called the Gestalt switch, where people are presented with the same bits of information. However, they get different interpretations. Some people see a young woman, some people see an old woman, some people see both. But that is a good illustration where you have the same evidence, but you get different interpretations of the evidence. This is a good example, the battle over Mars. We can find dozens of articles on the geology of Mars, what's actually happening. Some scientists believe that it's a blue planet that was shaped by water at some point, and the water is now gone, or in the caps. A red planet, other CO2 and other gases. Remember, gases are considered fluids, so the geological features that we see can also be interpreted as other gas exchanges and gas erosion, that type of, like we would see in a desert. A white planet shaped by volcanic activity. Which leads, is there really water on Mars? In my master's, part of the paper I did, I showed an article where we had one group of scientists that said, yes, based on our data, we find that there's water on Mars. Well, there's another group that comes back in with the same equipment, accusing them that they were trying to get money for their funding. Remember, science is big money. $40 million for about 40 papers. There's a lot of funding, there's a lot of money, there's jobs. Look at the Hadron Super Collider. $20 billion to build a particle accelerator at 20 miles in diameter. For what? To find a God particle. Now, this group in Mars, they had the same equipment, but there was obviously something else going on, or at least there was accusations of this occurring. Paradigms, talked about before. set parameters interpreting data. You can only interpret your data in these confines. Naturalism is a confine that secular evolutionists put on interpreting data about history. If you think outside of this box or paradigm, not only will I attack your theory, but you as a person, you all of a sudden become dead to the scientific community because you do not believe the paradigm set by the rest of us. And to think outside that box is really to go against us and a personal attack. Now, if you ever read books by Thomas Kuhn, he actually argues this is actually how science actually occurs and science actually changes through people thinking outside these paradigms. Louis Pasteur was against spontaneous generation, which scientists at that time supported for the theory of evolution. Ernest Haeckel and his drawings is an example. Ernest Haeckel also was a big proponent towards Hitler's nihilism, where Hitler picked up evolutionary theory as an excuse to get rid of the unfavored races and unfavored people like gypsies, homosexuals, Jewish people, mentally handicapped, and so on. Alfred Wegener is a classic example taught in earth science classes where his theory on continental drift went against the paradigm that the earth itself was shrinking. That was the idea of how we got mountains and valleys back in the 1900s. And it wasn't later until sonar was developed really that Alfred Wegener's theory was actually proved correct. Now, a good illustration is the movie Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed by Ben Stein. Now, he is a proponent for intelligent design. I don't necessarily agree with everything of the intelligent design movement, but he is good at illustrating the paradigm known as evolution, that to think outside of the evolutionary theory, especially in the education system, is quite unfounded. Now, there's two warring beliefs about evidence interpretations: positivism and interpretivism. This is basically for the higher level education student or Christian who's an educator to look further into. Obviously, if you have the stomach for this type, you can continue on. The positivism, they are basically people who they believe that people are separate from science, that they are completely objective and they let the evidence show the answer. These are more of your hard sciences, natural sciences, chemistry, physics, biology. And then you have the interpretivism, which people basically are an integral part of their actual science. This is more soft science or social sciences, psychology. Most people in hard science would actually call soft science as pseudoscience. So this is actually to the positivist. He's going to see interpretivists as pseudoscientists, not real scientists. Now, paradigms, I have talked about this before, but paradigms are part of the worldview, the way of thinking, way of interpreting evidence in that box. Now, for the evolutionists, that's going to be materialism, that matter and time are all that really exist. Positivists are also additional, that researchers and the reality are separate. So they assume that they are being completely objective when they talk about evolution. Rationalism, reason is the foundation of certainty and knowledge. Obviously their hearts are darkened, so they think to listen to the Bible is irrational and without reason, which the Christian knows that faith is reasonable according to what the Bible actually does say. Now, this chart really, I'm not going to go over the whole thing, but it compares positivism and interpretivism. Ontology, the person and the researcher in reality are separate versus the interpretivist who's going to say the person or the researcher and reality are inseparable. I actually agree with both. I think at the point where we get to history, this is where interpretivism really takes place. History is not repeatable. You cannot repeat history because you cannot live over and over again. And you might get firsthand experience from people who were there, but eventually they're going to die out. And even if we put all the scientists that we've ever known of together, we really can't get an account of creation because it's not an actual repeatable event. Just like the Big Bang Theory is not an actual repeatable event. So I would actually lean that creation and evolution should actually not be taught in a science classroom, and just something strictly that we can actually repeat. Now that would actually be good science, but either way, that's not going to happen. So we have to have an answer. Epistemology, in the positivist, the objective reality exists beyond the human mind. That is actually a correct statement, and I would agree with that. However, we make everything subjective to our own experience. Basically, what the interpretivist would say is knowledge of the world is intentionally constituted through a person's lived experience. Yes, both of these, I think, actually in reality coincide. That God is apart from us. There is an objective reality that is completely apart from us. We are created beings. God is not. What we do in this life does not really ultimately matter. It's what God does and who God is and what He does in our life and through our lives. Now, what I like about this, and I'll just go down to the bottom, that reliability. In the positivist, reliability is research results that can be reproduced. Repeatability. Now, they will say this, but do they actually believe that? Can evolution be actually repeated? No, it cannot. And those people who say, well, we make well, that's not the point. You make a computer program do what you want it to do. You are looking at that computer program in the interpretivist ontology saying that you're basically enforcing your reality onto this program because you are the one actually making the data do what you want it to. But that's another story. Interpretivists will see that there is an awareness of the researcher to recognize and address the implications of their subjectivity. Now, this actually I like because this is the healthy skepticism that they often talk about. But if you talk about a skepticism towards evolution, oh no, that's not going to actually happen. All right, beliefs lead to action. Does the evolutionary biology act on his or her belief in what evolution is? Do they? Basically, natural selection becomes whoever has the most children. I don't see many acting on trying to have as many babies as possible because they're so smart and they want their genes to be in the gene pool more higher and better than us creationists, right? Does hard empirical evidence give you reason to love that determined chemical reaction? When that scientist goes home, he hugs his child, which basically the way he interprets his evidence would say that this child is nothing but a determined chemical reaction that is taking place. Does their belief lead to action? No, the only belief that leads to action that I've seen is most of the attacks and ridicule. That's really all they have is attacks and ridicule, hence my flying spaghetti monster here. Why argue with a creationist if it doesn't have anything empirically to affect your life? In reality, they actually are hypocrites in themselves because they do not act upon what they actually believe. Now, Hitler acted on what he believed about evolution. Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, acted on her belief. And what is wrong with those behaviors? They acted on their beliefs. Yet, creationists, when we act on our beliefs, we're the foolish ones. We're the hypocrites. Quote, Muhammad Ali, don't necessarily agree with everything, but this idea really sparked something in my head. It's the repetition of affirmations that lead to belief. And once that belief becomes a deep conviction, things begin to happen. You act on what you say you believe, and things happen that show people you actually believe what you believe. So, I guess the question from the Creation Tutor is, what do you believe? And are you acting upon it? You can go to www.thecreationtutor.com and you get free creation resources. I don't really charge because the gospel is free. Why would I charge for what I try to do is help? So I hope this blesses you. I hope this gives you some meat to chew on. If you have any questions, you can also email me at info@thecreationtutor.com. Be glad to answer. Thank you so much. Have a great day.